Hello, everybody. We are back to talk about Scream 2, a pretty solid sequel to the Scream franchise. If you haven't seen my video on the first Scream, check that out. But here we go. I got my notes. We're talking about Scream 2. Right off the bat, we get this concept of a movie within a movie, which I'm sure had been done before, especially with like plays within movies and stuff like that. But this is kind of, again, at the point in my childhood where I was at when these movies were coming out, this is kind of like one of the big examples of that. As things were becoming more meta, is this movie. My second note is just Niobe. I forgot Jada Pinkett was in these movies, and I just rewatched the Matrix movies a couple weeks ago. And here she is in Scream 2. Okay, so they're watching the Stab movie in the movie theater, and I wrote down a note that I did not realize how true it was going to be throughout the whole series. But these Stab movies, I wrote down, most faithful film adaptation ever. Because the scenes in these Stab movies, the way they play out, are so similar to what actually happened in the Scream movies. And I get that, like, that's the point, right? And they're not exact, and I think the production of the Scream movie intentionally makes these errors in the scenes with the Stab movies. Like, someone will say, not exactly the right word or whatever, blah, 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 blah. And I think that's supposed to be a joke about, like, oh, look, they got it wrong, ha, ha, ha. But I'm watching it, and I'm just like, how are these so accurate? Like, obviously, they're not one-to-one, but they're very, very close, up to the setting, up to how they're standing in the hallway of the school talking to each other when no one else was around. The words that were said, did Sydney, like, give these people information on the conversations that were had? I just, like, even if they had all of that information, film adaptations of true life events are usually not very accurate. But throughout this series, the Stab films are pretty accurate to what happened. And that was just kind of a funny note. Because like I said, I think they tried to make it seem like, oh, they're getting this stuff wrong. But by trying to change these tiny little details, the overall concept of it is very, very close to what actually happened. It's just another technology note. When Sydney is screening calls that are coming to her house, I just wrote, wow, she has caller ID. Remember when that was like a big deal? I remember when like getting caller ID on your phone was like fantasy, because most people didn't have that. And even in the movie theater, when they're watching Stab, Jada Pinkett is like, star 69. I'm like, remember when you had to make an active effort to see who called you by hanging up and then calling a second number that would tell you that, oh my gosh. Star 69, man. Okay. Then I just started writing down the 90s actors that were in this movie. I wrote Sarah Michelle Gellar and Joshua Jackson. Those were both very influential actors on my childhood. We get this bit where Randy is complaining about sequels and how bad they are, and I don't remember the exact lines that he says, but it's made so much better now that I've seen Son of the Mask, the sequel to The Mask, but the sequel starring Jamie Kennedy and taking place, or made at least, far after the original Mask. There's just an extra meta flavor there that wasn't even there when they were writing this movie. And then I wrote Dewey is the GOAT. And really, I should have mentioned that in my video for the first one. But Dewey is just such a nice guy. Such a good character. I love Dewey. My next note, speaking of Dewey, was I forgot how much Gail was still the worst. I knew that she was the worst in the first movie, but I thought that by the end of the first movie, start of the second movie, she was kind of on Team Sydney, right? And like, one of the gang. That's kind of how I remember it. And she does kind of get there eventually, but I had forgotten how much of a backtread they did with her character and had her go through the same arc again. At one point I wrote that we still don't have widespread cell phones because somebody was answering a landline. I think that was in the sorority. Sarah Michelle Gellar. Omega Beta Zeta. That line just sticks out as something from my childhood. I don't know why. Omega Beta Zeta when she answers the phone. I feel like me and my sister probably answered the phone with that line. Probably at least a couple times. Anyway, I crossed that out because later we do see more kids around campus having cell phones. So I guess it would make sense that the sorority would still have a landline at that point in time. But then I wrote, why are they killing non-Sydneys? I don't remember exactly what my thought process was when I was writing this. But like Sarah Michelle Gellar's character, why did they go into that house to kill her? What was her name? Casey? Because it was Cece. Right, but then they said no, it was actually Casey. So I think this was with the opening couple. I think it was just killing people with the same names as the victims from the original murders, but I don't get why. Right, because the meta aspect of it was, oh, they're doing a real life sequel, but that's not what. I guess maybe that's what what's his face, Mickey, what he was doing, but that's not what Debbie Salt was doing. So, I don't know. I'm a little bit confused. Just like in the first movie, why did they kill, what's her name? Casey and, oh, it's Casey again. Why did they kill Casey and Steve? These extra kills that are necessary for a slasher film to work don't really fit into the motivations in the story. But I'll forgive it because the movies are so good. Then we have, what's his name? Derek singing I Think I Love You in the cafeteria. And this scene is what I think of whenever I hear that song. I don't know if this is the first time I ever heard that song, but probably. But anytime I hear that song, what have you, in a store, on the store radio, or in a TV commercial or whatever, this is the scene that I think of. Even if I'm not conscious of, oh, it's that thing from Scream 2, I think of this. This is what that song boils back down to for me, is this actor, what's his name, Jerry O'Connor or something like that, standing up on a cafeteria singing horribly to Neff Campbell. Okay, we get some more meta references with Tori Spelling and David Schwimmer. Just kind of comments that are made that make it more meta. I wrote down the line, what a terrible teacher. I think this is the drama teacher, the director of the play. Your actor is being actively targeted by serial killers, recreating when she was actively targeted by serial killers, what, a year prior? Playing on when her mother was murdered a year prior to that. And your advice as a teacher is, oh, don't worry about it, just keep acting. Terrible teacher. Hits a little close to home for me. Then we get this scene in the library with instant messages. You guys remember instant messages? IMs? America Online? Man, the 90s were great. Okay. I think it's, I'm losing track of my notes. So we got Sydney is being escorted by these police officers. And they're in the library. She's getting these IMs from the killer. And they take her away from the computer, which, by the way, is no active threat. And they put her in this spot and they tell her, wait right here. And that spot is right on a doorway that leads to a hallway and I think a staircase. And then that's when Cotton comes up and talks. And it's just like, that is the worst possible place to put her for safekeeping, as you two go. Like, put her in a corner where no one can come up from behind her. right? Or just against the wall with no door, like putting her right next to a doorway that exits to a hallway, that exits to a stairwell, is the worst possible place they could have put her. And it's proven because then Cotton comes up right after that. What do we have? We got a line somewhere, I think it's with Dewey and Gale maybe, where they're searching this building on campus for a VCR. And he says, there's got to be a VCR around here somewhere. And I can't tell if this is when VCRs were new. And so most people didn't have them in their homes. And so they're looking through this, film school building for it. I don't think this is on the decline of VCRs, right? I don't remember exactly what year this came out, but I don't think VCRs were on the decline by now. So I think this line hints at the fact that this is a mostly pre-VCR era. But I feel like they were pretty common by then. I don't know. Maybe they just didn't know anyone around. Just a strange line to be looking for a VCR. I got one right there. Yeah, I still have a VCR. I still watch stuff on it sometimes. Anyway, we get more play between Dewey and Gale. And Gale has this line, I never meant to hurt you. And it's like, you clearly wrote very insulting things about Dewey. And with what you knew about Dewey and how much of a fan of you he is, you must have known he was going to read those things. So I call bullcrap on saying you never meant to hurt him, Gale. You absolutely did. You're the worst. The scene with the soundproof room, great. I don't think I understood that scene the first time I watched the movie. So it was kind of weird and confusing. But after I understood what soundproofing was, I think by the end of that scene when he hits the microphone, I had figured it out. I don't remember how old I was when I first saw these movies. But very clever. I like that a lot. We get the scene where Sydney has to crawl over the killer in the car because all the other doors that they're in are jammed shut. Great tense scene. I got a cough. Give me one moment. Okay, sorry about that. So, this scene features a car crash that reminded me of a scene that I thought was from a different movie, that I thought was from a Final Destination movie, where a car crashes into something with a lot of piping, and the piping moves through someone in the front seat, through their eye, impaling them. And I have this memory of this scene, and this actress says the line, ooh, right through his eye. And I remember years ago reading trivia about this scene. The trivia being that that's not where the pipe was supposed to go, through the dummy or whatever. But that's where it went, and the actress kind of played off that, with some improvisation. And as they're driving and leading up to this crash, I'm reminded of that scene that, again, I thought was from a Final Destination movie, and then as the scene plays out, I'm like, that's this scene! That's this movie right here! So that was a very strange experience of being reminded of a scene that I didn't realize was the scene that I was actually watching. I don't understand, though, after they're out of the car, they know that the driver door is jammed, and the killer wouldn't know that, because he's been knocked out, right? Why wouldn't you rip off the mask right away? They're going to leave, right? And then she decides, no, I gotta go back, I gotta see who this is. And she goes back, and then he's escaped by that point, right? Why would you not do it right away? Because even if he's awake, and even if he's gonna grab you, you're outside of the car, and he still has to rearrange himself and crawl out the window. You're at an advantage. That's at worst, right? And at best, he's still knocked out, and you can see who it is. I get it. It's a movie. They got extended time up. But I'm just like, come on. They could have put him in a physical position that would have made it difficult to do that, and doing that may have made it more likely to wake him up. But as it is, he's just laying there. It would have been easy to just poof. just little things. Little things. Once again, I wrote campus is not shut down, just like the first film. This campus definitely would have been shut down after multiple students are murdered by a serial killer targeting students. Oh. Okay, so then we get this scene on the stage with Derek. And she, at this point, is concerned that Derek is one of the killers. She finds out that Mickey is one of the killers. And they have this showdown. And then, before the showdown, Mickey reveals himself as the killer. And he's trying to make Sydney think that Derek is also a killer. Derek, at this point, is tied up. He wants Sydney to trust him. But he's asking Sydney to untie him. Now, we, the audience, and Sydney, at this point, don't know if he's one of the killers or not. But he knows that he's not. And he knows that Mickey is. And that Mickey is right there. And Sydney is right there. And if, as we later find out, he truly cares about Sydney, I feel like his instructions to Sydney would not be, untie me. It would be, run away. Go hide. Right? Because if I'm tied up, right, and I'm not the killer, right, like Derek, Sydney untying me would be bad for Mickey. So he's not going to allow that to happen. So he's either going to kill Sydney or, as he does, me, Derek. Why would you ask Sydney to untie you? That is the worst option. Tell her to run away, tell her to hide, and then maybe she still might not trust you, but at least she'll be in a safer position, and you might survive a little bit longer because he doesn't feel the need to kill you right now because you're still tied up. Weird call, Derek. Weird call. I wrote down some stuff about Mrs. Loomis, that she connected with Mickey through the internet. This movie was very much a product of the new internet. Also, Mrs. Loomis reference to Mrs. Voorhees being the killer in the first Friday the 13th, which was a plot point, not a plot point, which was referenced, mentioned, featured, whatever, in the original Scream movie, so that's a nice callback there. I wrote a lot of unnecessary property damage. I feel like that has to do with a fight on the... Oh yeah, when Sydney's attacking the killers on the stage, she's locked herself backstage, and she's just cutting ropes to make these things fall. I'm just like, you could just release them, right? You could just release them. You don't need to cut the ropes. My headcanon is that she's got some pent up frustration at the director, and that's her way of taking it out. And then my last note is just life experience. And I think what I meant by that is like, it's easy to gloss over because it's a movie, but like trying to actually put yourself in Sydney's shoes. I think this is all within 3 or 4 years. Your mother has been murdered. You either find out or accept the fact that she's not who you thought she was. You have been personally attacked, and all of your friends have either been killed or were the killers, or both, in high school. And then you try to get a fresh start in college, and the same thing repeats itself. Like, how would you process that and move on with your life? Obviously, we see how she does when we get to Scream 3. But, like, when you try to think about this kind of stuff outside of a movie, it's heavy. It's heavy stuff. But there we go. That's Scream 2. Those are my thoughts. You can let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. But that's what I have to say about it. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good day. Goodbye.